In the previous hour, they were talking about the messages that this activity today sends to our allies and to our enemies. President Bush used to also say that you also send a message to your military when you take action like this. And so what do you think that they heard? If you're in the military today and you're there on the ground, or if you're a mom and dad, do you feel that things are better for your loved ones that are over there because they have that kind of support?
Well, certainly, Dana, and I can tell you that over the years, starting back in 2002 to where we were just a few months ago, it went to the point from when you had a ground force commander, the guy actually on the ground, who could see the target, would actually had the authority to drop a bomb on his own. Fast forward 14, 15 years, it would have to go through a litany of lawyers, and you'd have to wake up people at Tampa and essentially get a UN resolution to drop a bomb. So I can say to those parents and those soldiers, what this tells me right now is that General Nicholson did have all the authority that he needed, but we weren't afraid to actually do what was necessary. And this sends a very large, I think, geopolitical message. But look, the reality of that physical location on the ground in those tunnels and the way it borders Pakistan, this was the right tool to actually take out something that's been a thorn in our side for a very long time.
Rick, you're a perfect person to ask this next question. I've been very curious lately of why Pakistan has seemingly been so quiet. It used to be in the news all the time. Any blowback do you think that the United States will get for this action, or do you think that Pakistan would actually support it since this was happening right on its border?
Well, look, I think, as you know, you worked hard on the issue of Pakistan in the Bush administration, and we had a difficult time with Pakistan because we had public pronouncements that were much different than the private conversations. So I think the answer is that privately we're probably going to get a wink and a nod from the Pakistanis, who will say, we know that these mountainous areas have been a problem. We know that ISIS is in these caves. So if we can, do anything to help, let us know what we can do without doing too much public help. And that's where I think we have to be able to challenge people to say, look, we need your public support as well as your private support. So I would be pushing for both Afghan leaders as well as the entire region, all of the leaders in the region, to come out publicly and support this. And that's where diplomacy, I think, can make a big difference right after something like a 21,000-pound bomb is dropped.
Ben, when the invasion of Afghanistan first happened in October of 2001, right after the attacks of 9/11, the goal was to protect the United States, our national interest, to deny terrorists from being able to have a safe haven from which to plot and plan terrorist attacks. To me, this action today speaks to that original goal. The goal is to prevent terrorists of any kind, Taliban, Al-Qaeda, whatever they might be, and now ISIS. How do you see it?
I would agree with you completely, Dana. And going to, Jennifer Griffin said that the estimates that there are 1,000 ISIS troops or fighters in Afghanistan. But remember that borderline, going into Pakistan, most of the ISIS fighters, the hardcore guys, actually came over from, essentially what's known as the Pakistani Taliban and certain splinter groups. So they probably have a few thousand that are over there. And that's been the problem, right, that we have, is that they just move over into Pakistan, they come back into Afghanistan. It's a very porous border region. And to Rick's point, which is exactly correct, that Pakistan, I think privately, they have a really good incentive in the sense that, if they ignored just years ago the fact that ISIS was even in their country, yet if you look at the number of attacks, all the way from the Shia, the mosque, all the way to some of the defense buildings that were attacked, they've lost a lot of people to the TTP and the Pakistani Taliban that now have essentially changed jerseys to ISIS. So I think they're publicly going to denounce it as an attack on their sovereignty, but I agree with Rick. I think privately they're going to be happy about it.
Rick, a last question to you. How can a hard power hit like this help with diplomatic issues that the president is trying to deal with when it comes to Syria, North Korea, Russia, you name it? Something like this, how does that change a conversation on the diplomatic front?
Well, make no mistake, it helps diplomacy quite a bit. And the reason is there's a difference between a threat of military action and a credible threat of military action. What we're seeing from the Trump administration is a very serious, credible threat of military action, whether it be in Syria or now here in Afghanistan. So the diplomats now have the ability to sit across the table from their counterparts and say, look, we've got to solve this problem, because if we're not able to solve this problem, I got to hand the file to the Department of Defense, and they don't negotiate. So we can drive a very hard bargain with diplomacy if you have diplomats who are focused on diplomacy with muscle, not weakness.